No questions, then we will pick it up here on page 85 of the big book. As usual, I use the one from AA program. If you want to use another one, it's pretty much the same either way. There's not going to be that much of a difference. So I'm going to go from page 85, and maybe the person who asked about these pages will pop on here at some point. But I'm going to take it in the center of a paragraph right at the top. It says, "We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given to us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us." And then it says, "We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition." So obviously the idea of fit spiritual condition is a prerequisite to all of these things that this is saying. So as far as I understand the program, being in fit spiritual condition would be living not as self, or not being driven by the sense of self. Not being driven by that opens you up into a space of neutrality where something else can drive this life. Let's call that a higher power or something. So it says, "We'll see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given to us without any effort, thought, or effort on our part." So there's a new attitude which is taken, or given to us without thought or effort on our part. So the way that I would see this little section here is a loss of faith in self and put into a higher power is like I didn't do anything, meaning that Jay does stuff as far as the steps, step 4, 5, the action steps, making amends, whatever, all the step stuff, but it's really a loss of faith in self, because those steps to me are to understand what has defeated us. That is called self. Self-reliance has failed us, defeated by 100 forms of self, or however you want to say. That is what has defeated us. So the action steps are looking at self to understand how has that defeated us. Another way I maybe could put it is, how has my mental system defeated me? You understand that by looking at the past, essentially. That's why its resentments are the biggest in 4 and 5. You ask for those to be removed from a higher power, and then you make amends. So you understand how self defeated you, and then you clean up what self did. We talked about this last time, but what is doing all the craziness? That is a movement of self. We are defeated by living and identifying as self. So when you don't identify as self, you move the identification to a higher power, you let that run your life, then this life gets cleaned up. But it wasn't on the action of changing Jay. It was on the action of seeing how Jay got defeated by Jay, how self has defeated this life, and then losing faith in it. So to me, that's why it says, we'll see a new attitude has been given to us without any effort on our part. Because it's not that Jay sees differently. There's a loss of faith in Jay because Jay failed. Seeing that it's failed, you stop identifying with that mental system. Because you see that when you identify with it, it kills you. So you put faith in something else. Let's call it a higher power of any sort. And in so doing, there's a new view given to you, not through the effort of changing Jay, but a loss of faith in Jay. So it comes without any thought or effort on our part. Thankfully, because any thought or effort on the part of Jay, at this point it's talking about like step 10 and 11, so it's on the back end of the process, let's say. Any thought or effort from J is thought and effort from alcoholism. So the alcoholism will distort whatever it gets a hold of, including the program. So really, I don't want the head to understand the program, because then there will be a lot of thought and effort, and it will be alcoholism doing that, and it's going to put me in the same position as it's always put me in. Yeah. So the focus is on self has defeated us, and what you are is not self. It is not identifying with self in that the life becomes better. That's why there's a new view given to us, and it's not thought or effort on J's part. Thankfully, because every time there's thought and effort from self, i.e. J, things go off the rails. Yeah? And then it says it just comes. That is the miracle of it. Yeah. So we're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. That's such a beautiful little part there. We're not fighting alcohol, nor are we avoiding temptation. Because either way is a movement of self. So at the start, you are probably resisting drinking or whatever, using of some sort. There's a resistance. But that resistance can't go on, because it will become so uncomfortable and unmanageable that it will collapse at some point. So it's saying now, the loss of faith in self, let's say, matures to a point where we're not fighting alcohol, neither are we avoiding temptation. So there's no more fighting and pushing, essentially, because what would fight and push is self. The infinite is not fighting and pushing. What you are is not doing anything. It's just aware of what's happening. Yeah? You are the awareness of self, or you are the hearing of self, of self-centeredness. You can hear that happening. So if that self-centeredness gets a hold of the program, now there's a bunch of effort to try to change and this and this and this and this. When just faith is lost on that movement, it's put into a higher power. It's neutralized, which in the next sentence it says, so we're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality. Neutrality. So I don't favor this way and I don't favor this way. That would be a position of neutrality. That's such a good word to me, because that is how this has landed. It's like a place of neutrality. I don't care if the head says go that way, and I don't care if the head says go that way. I'm not going to go either. Yeah? And in that case, I'm placed in a position of neutrality. So self will try to go, I have to do this, and I don't have to do that. I got to go blah, 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 and I got to blah, 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 blah. Yeah? I don't go that way, and I don't go that way. Then that position of neutrality is like an open door to the present moment. What you are, as the infinite, is always in that position of neutrality. The left and right, the up and down, the of self is not neutral, obviously. So this highlights something very important. Self is a dualistic movement. So in the world of body and world, there's up, down, salt, pepper, left, right, in and out. Yeah? Neutrality would obviously not be that. Neutrality wouldn't have two options. It's like the ever-present, which is unaffected by the two options. The infinite is not moved by the finite. So to be placed in a position of neutrality, it's not that self and J has become neutral. That cannot happen. Actually, that's exactly what failed in the spiritual seeking. That's what failed. I thought through the program and through spiritual practice and seeking, J would become neutral, non-judgmental, ever compassionate. Yeah. Well, it didn't happen. Not because I failed as a body, a relative thing called J failed. It can't become neutral. You are the neutrality which the left and right go through, which would point to the idea that I'm not J. Yeah, the body, the body is a dualistic thing. Alcoholism is dualistic. It's not neutral. It's like a hardcore duality in a way. It's super self-centered. Yeah. So for something to be centered on self, there would be a self here and an other there. Well, alcoholism is like an extreme example of that. That's not neutral. What you and I are, not as two things, but what we are, yes, is of a neutral place. So obviously, whatever presents as a bunch of opinions and beliefs left and right, that is of self. This is saying, when we stop fighting either way, yeah, by a loss of faith in the mental system and what it presents, by knowing that the duality will fail, yeah, we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Because what you are, the infinite, is never touched by the finite. So it doesn't matter what the body and the mind sell, or the product that alcoholism tries to present to you, you're in a position of neutrality. So you're safe and protected, essentially. That's a solution. This is like a solution to me. We're not talking about managing conditions. Managing conditions in early sobriety and as you go through the steps is very important. But in my experience, it's not sustainable for a life, for a long, long period of time. Yeah? We need a solution. So the solution to self, which is dualistic, would be to see that you're not that dualistic movement. And then you're ever present in what you already are, which is the neutrality. Let's say the space in which left and right move through. That is a solution. Yeah? If we're trying to manage the left and right, it's impermanent. So it's always going to keep moving left and right. That's not a solution to me. A solution is like when I read Indian philosophy for the first time and they said constant existence consciousness bliss. Well, J obviously is not in existence, in a consistent existence consciousness bliss. Yeah? J's mental movement makes that left and right. So it's not neutral and it's not permanent. So obviously a loss of faith in self, the sense of individuality, would sit you in a place of constant neutrality. But it's not expecting that Jay or Eric or Miffy are going to be in constant neutrality because self can't do it. Yeah. And it said in the last reading that we did that to be rid of self completely, which is kind of like the Indian philosophy stuff that I read. To be rid of self completely, they say, would mean that this is a possibility, to be rid of self completely. Does that mean kill the body? No. It means you no longer identify or live as self. That would rid you from the ups and downs and the mayhem, let's say, of the alcoholic. That would turn down the volume of the alcoholism a lot. It would also turn down the volume of the mental system and the thought system a lot. Yeah? So you move faith away from self into a higher power. Self gets turned down, turned down, turned down. You come to see that you're not that. Yeah? What has defeated you is the identification with the mental system. But that's not what you are. Yeah? You are before that. You are the neutrality. You don't become that. You lose faith in the identification with what's not neutral, and you land in the ever-present neutrality as it is. Safe and protected. And then it says, we have not even sworn off. Because the only thing that would swear off drinking would be self. In the context of, I'm never going to drink again. Yeah? We don't even bother with that, because you see that it's self. You don't have to do that from neutrality. There's no point. Yeah? It's like, I hear a lot in yoga studios when people talk about what they're doing and how, to me it's all just they're trying to manage conditions. That does not work for me or people like me that I know. Managing circumstances doesn't work. because I'm not managerial quality. So when I try to manage something, it gets mismanaged because I'm alcoholic. The mental system is alcoholic. Yeah? I'm not a good manager. That's why they say your life is unmanageable, because you're not a good manager at managing your life. I don't believe the program is about becoming a good manager. It's losing faith in the bad manager. It's not identifying anymore with what mismanaged my life. Let something else manage the life. Yeah? Losing faith in this, you're placed in a seat of neutrality. J does not become neutral. J has beliefs and judgments. Yeah? The neutrality obviously doesn't exist as J. J is a bad manager, not just in alcoholism, but at work and in relationships, and in any case, J is a bad manager. That is easy to tell from the history of this thing. This does not do well managing life. So it says we have not even sworn off. That would be a management technique to me. I'm not a good manager. Even of my own sobriety, I'm not a good manager. That would be very chaotic. So to identify with the system that goes left and right is the J-ness. Now you don't have to hate self. This is not about hating or even trying to destroy something. It's a simple view that what has failed you is what you're identified as a body and mind. The book calls that self. You disidentify from that, essentially. You stop living as that. You put faith in something else. And then the individuality gets tuned by losing faith in it, putting it in something else, letting something else manage this life. It's beautiful because, like they say right here, there's no thought or effort on our part. I wish people in meditation would see that. Because most meditation and, like, let's say Zen teaching, at least the stuff that's come across my ears, is management techniques. To try to manage the individual on the idea that the individual is going to become free. Yeah? But this is saying very clearly that there's a new attitude given to me without any thought or effort on my part. The only way that could happen would be a loss of faith in myself. Yeah? Which is why they say in the 12 and 12 book, self-confidence is no good whatever. Because when you put confidence in self, you're putting confidence in alcoholism. And it's a conditioned movement. Okay? They knew years ago, whatever, probably 60 years ago, I guess, ish, when this came out. They knew alcoholism lived on. Yeah? It doesn't get cured. It gets dealt with by a loss of faith in self. We have not even sworn off. Instead, it says, instead the problem has been removed. The problem has been removed. There is a solution through not identifying with self. That way, self is no longer driving the vehicle. If self is not in the management position of life, the problem is removed. That is the solution. Yeah? That's unreal. It's not that the alcoholism has left J, it's that I'm not J. That would neutralize the whole thing in many ways, yeah? So it's a loss of identification with the mental system. The problem is neutralized. But they're very clear in this book and in my experience that the alcoholic thinking continues. The judgment, the extreme self-centeredness, all of that continues on. Yeah? Not just for alcoholics, that continues on for everybody. It might be an extreme case for the alcoholic or the addict or whatever, but everybody's head is self-centered. That's why the Bhagavad Gita says the ego cage of I, me, mine. It's an ego cage. So, that's beautiful stuff, this book, man. Holy. So instead, the problem has been removed. A loss of faith in self neutralizes the problem. This is a great solution. No thought or effort on my part. J is not, to me, this program, of course, the action steps you take. You do the work, yeah? Faith without works is dead. But once it's been worked through, no thought or effort on my part. Because any move that my head makes, I'm going to do this, oh yeah, let's do this. It's all management tech. It's the head trying to manage life again. Yeah. That's more thought or effort on my part. It's like a maze in a way, yeah. And I've tried all kinds of management techniques. They all failed. They all failed. The only thing that really hit me was I'm not that. Yeah. Whatever's heard is not what's hearing. So a negation, this is not an acquisition thing to me. Life is given to you through recovery. I don't feel we go out and get life. It's given by a loss of faith in this, and then lo and behold, things start happening when Jay's management techniques are not destroying the whole thing. Like from my head's point of view, if I don't think tons of thoughts and manage it, the world will fall apart. Yeah. Well, how wrong was that? This is the playing of God from the mental system. Yeah. I know what's right for me and everyone else. Drunk. It's like when sometimes I talk to people in recovery and I keep relapsing, but I know what the problem is, yeah? Obviously not, if you keep relapsing. What's saying I know what the problem is the problem. What's saying I know the answer is the problem. The one who's saying I know, that is self. Relying on that is the problem. It's in the book. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful stuff. So a loss of self, a loss of faith in self, the problem is neutralized. We're placed into a position of neutrality. Not as a body and the mind, this does not become neutral, but you land in the neutrality of the infinite, which you already are. And then what else is here? That is how we react so long. Good. Yeah. Good. So this is page 85. Beautiful. I'm just reading what's next just in case there's something else we can hit on here. It's so good, man. You should read the book if you haven't read the book. If you're in the program, you get a sponsor. Otherwise, you're relying on self to take you through the program, and that will bomb. I tried that. I relapsed after 3 months. Self will grab onto the program and manipulate it like it manipulates everything else. That's why you need a sponsor. I need a sponsor, especially early on, to check me, you know. When my head goes, I think I have a good idea, he would probably say, I definitely wouldn't do that. Because the me who has a good idea, that's me identified as self, and self is alcoholic. So a good idea from me is an alcoholic idea, and that ain't a good idea. That's a self-centered idea. This is, to me, like a lot of the most beautiful stuff in the book is the no thought or effort on my part. Because it's the same in self-inquiry in Advaita. If the answer to an inquiry, who's trying to make that move, is me or I, that is self. And that is like pretty much every move. Yeah. So when I think I have a great idea, well, it's probably not a great idea is what the answer for me would be. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not managerial quality, nor will I ever be. So any thought or effort down the line. Yeah. Now that's of course not to say there is action taken in the program. You find a sponsor and you do the 12 steps so that you can see that self has defeated you and all the ways that it has. Now that action will help you lose faith in self. I've seen enough people try to spiritualize themselves out of addiction. Most of them relapse and a bunch of them have died. I see it in yoga studios a lot. These are addicts and alcoholics who are trying to use yoga to get out of themselves. But that is self. That is self trying to get out of itself. And AA knows very clearly that self can't get out of self. Come on. Good. Beautiful. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Put them in the chat box. Jamie, welcome in here. Good. 7. Nice. Wow. Nice. Yes, character defects. Well, from this view, character defects are the defects of self. So those defects are identified because those are what defeat you. Whether you're drinking or not, those defects will defeat you. So that helps build evidence in the case against relying on self. So a higher power will help remove those character defects. The way I was always taught was steps 6 and 7 are lifelong steps. Because when those character defects present, which they will because they're aspects of self which are conditioned, you're not doing those. Those are happening mechanically, those defects of self. When those present, you lose faith in them by going to a higher power. Yeah. But yes, of course you need to identify those character defects first. What made you go to the 12 steps? Did you hit rock bottom? I've hit many rock bottoms. And you would think if they're made of rocks, they would not break, but they keep going if they're allowed to. What happened to me was more like a limited amount of options. Limited amount of options. It was like the last house on the thing. It was either that or just end this whole situation. A lot of depression was like a big drive for me, whereas the mental system was becoming unmanageable. The unmanageable thing to me is super clear, not just in the drinking, but in the depression and the way the thought system presents. That was the first unmanageability, actually. When it says I was powerless and my life was unmanageable, the idea or the view that I was powerless over the mental system, that was very clear. That is what drove me into the program in the first place, was the absolute lack of power and manageability of the head, because it would swing so far. It was the opposite of neutrality. That was obvious to me. That still is very obvious to me, how hard the head swings. Yeah. Now that volume, at least in the experience of this, has been turned down like mega time. Big time. Big time. By a loss of faith in the swinging. But the unmanageability of drinking, yes. But the unmanageability of the thought system was really, that was the first thing to me which was like clear, even before I went into the program. Because it would just go so wild left and right. That's what drove me in there in the first place. And yeah. And then there was after a relapse, after 3 months, there was a real willingness in a way to just shut up, because I knew I was failing and failing over and over and over again. And I don't know. I think I just defeated to the point where I was willing to listen and willing to save my butt rather than my face. Yeah, I guess. But listening and not debating people for once. So when my sponsor said something after that relapse, that was the answer. There was not a debate for me, because what was debating was messed up. Yeah? Now after some years, I went and studied yoga with some teachers who in a way were super helpful and in a very certain way not helpful. Because I started to think I knew something again. And thankfully that failed again. And then my sponsor and some people listened to the program helped write that once again. Yeah, that's why I'm very clear now that I will never be managerial quality. It's almost like I dipped a toe back in being the manager and things went crazy again. Yeah. So it's a loss of trust. It's a loss of faith in the J-ness that the life goes better. But what drove me in was the unmanageability of the mental system. Yeah. And then the unmanageability of the mental system, of course, drinking was just trying to manage that. Drinking was a management technique, essentially. Yeah. So the bottom for me was this mental swinging. And then the amount of drinking, of course, once I had the first drink, all the stuff you read in the book, that was like obvious once I read the book. You know. Once the first drink was there, then the brain was super, it would just go crazy. I wasn't in control after that, but yeah. I wasn't in control before that either. This was all the movement of self, but I was identified as those thoughts. So when they went crazy, it's just the life went with them. They were driving based on the faith in the thoughts. Okay. So if you see how erratic your thoughts are, my first movement was I'm going to try to change those. That failed over and over and over and over again. That's why we look at this book this way. This is not about changing. It's a loss of faith in the J. Yeah, management techniques don't work because I'm not managerial quality. Yeah, in a way, I'm not manageable, and if I try to manage anything, it gets mismanaged. But thankfully, you're not self. Yeah, so you identify how bad it's managing things, and then you lose faith in it. The idea that I'm going to become a good manager failed to me. Now, still now, yeah, forever. It's great news because it's a lot less effort and pushing on my part. Yeah. To me, it's like, it gets so unmanageable that you become willing to listen, I would hope. You stop talking. Like, they have great stuff, at least where I live in the program of like, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Like, stop talking. Go to a program, get a sponsor, and take their advice. Some of the best stuff that was ever said to me was old guys being like, you should shut the F up. You should just shut up. Just go to meetings and shut up and listen. That is like, to me, that is the best advice I ever got, really. Because what was thinking and talking was self. And they knew that, but obviously I didn't know that. You know? This is why it's like, this is, I think, why when we do other stuff on here, it's always about the method of listening and the method of negation or inquiry. Because listening to me is the most important thing. Like, if you've been relapsing a lot and you go to meetings and you're talking about all the stuff you know, I don't want to hear that because you're relapsing a lot. So you don't know anything, really. You know what I mean? This is just like, I'm just sharing what's worked best for me. It's like if I'm having a really hard time and I'm talking about why that is and how I know that, I should stop talking. Because obviously what's talking doesn't know the answer, otherwise I wouldn't be having a super hard time. That seems obvious in hindsight, but when I was having a really hard time, I wouldn't see that, yeah? So I needed older guys to be like, bro, stop talking. Just go to meetings, listen to people who've been sober for a long time, get a sponsor, and do the steps. I wish we could say that in meditation retreats. Because there's a lot of self going off in meditation and in spiritual seeking. There's a lot of self going off, trust me. Maybe more than in AA, because at least in the programs they have these things, you know. The first thing you need to stop doing is playing God. Well, if you're like me, all of the thoughts and ideas I have are playing God. So to stop playing God, I would essentially have to lose faith in all those thoughts and ideas. And then maybe God can take over. But if I'm always talking, then I'm playing God, yeah. And the mental system will play God with this program, for sure. The mental system will try to do this program alone without a sponsor. I can't even count how many times I've heard people fail at that. That is like, because as soon as the head reads this book and then tries to approach it, that's alcoholism trying to manage a program. That's like, that can only fail. There cannot be success in that approach. That's why when we talk here, we're not talking about management techniques. Management techniques at the start, for sure. Like when the old guys were saying, be quiet, bro. This is management techniques in order to neutralize self so that it can be sat down and it can hear something else, you know. I don't know if this helps, but if you have a question or something, put it in the chat, yeah. This is the stuff that really like cut the head off the dragon for me. I thought when I went into recovery, I had a bunch of good ideas and stuff. And those were all self. And then I came to review those, and none of them were good ideas, actually. They were all like lining me up for relapse. Yeah. Like an example of that to me is new people come in, and then they go, I'm going to get in a new relationship and change everything right away. Those are bad ideas. It's too much movement early in recovery. And that amount of movement will fire self up and then they relapse, you know. Yeah. That's just what's worked for me. A loss of faith in self. Move it to a higher power, and then you'll see that what was defeating your life was what you were identified as, which is Jay's thinking. Yeah. That's what defeated this life, was Jay's thinking. That will defeat the life tomorrow if I just start living as those thoughts. The thoughts get turned down a lot, though. A lot. And then a loss of faith in self becomes a real, like, hallelujah. I don't know if that helps or not, but if you want to add something on, please feel free to put it in the chat there. Advaita Vedanta and self-inquiry are very similar, and so is listening. Yeah. Like listening meditation, as soon as you hear the head pop up, you don't grab that. So it's kind of like the same technique in many ways. You stop grabbing at the contents, what they would call the contents of your experience, or what a teacher I studied with, Judith Blackstone, would call the contents of your experience. Because the contents of your experience right now, the mental system and the body, that's self. Okay? That's self. So the more we grasp onto it, the more self drives this life rather than the awareness of it, let's say, or the open space of listening. I feel listening is like the individual has to learn to listen, and in doing that, you start to listen to the individuality. And then you see how that individuality would defeat you. Because you walk through your day, and then you hear your head react to something totally like distorted. And then that becomes like more obvious in a way. Self exposes itself. Yeah. And it's very greedy. Self is very greedy, so it's going to overexpose itself. Yeah. All right, nice. All right, anything from anyone? Maybe everybody left. That's funny. All right, well, if there's nothing else,